Twitter is one of those platforms that make you lose faith in humanity, one tweet at a time. By the way, I have Twitter now. Anyway, it seems everyone is so entrenched in their ideological groups that they think any means is justified if they get the ends they want. The other day, I even saw people celebrating the death of the Queen of England. Why? The Queen of England is not some dictator like the leader of North Korea or the Ayatollah. She was mostly just a ceremonial figure, so why celebrate her death? Because she represents an idea one disagrees with? Everyone can be representative or agent or unknowing participant in a particular type of ideology someone somewhere opposes. This makes everyone a potential enemy. I'm not saying one shouldn't have causes they feel passionate about, but when people close their eyes to the moral implications of their claims, that means something has gone terribly wrong in their moral compass. But what? Recently, I read a book titled Dangerous Minds, written by the University of Toronto Emeritus Professor Ronald Beiner, which helped me make sense of some of these questions. The book is primarily about philosophers such as Nietzsche and Heidegger, whose philosophy is uncritically adopted without answering their challenges against liberalism, liberal thought, and liberal way of life. Some of their critiques have even been adopted by some very extreme ideologues today. If such thinkers are going to be adopted, their criticism of liberalism requires a response. But many people, including scholars, for a very long time, presume people would intuitively prefer liberalism to all other regimes. I mean, communism fell, fascism fell, all other regimes seemed inferior to liberalism, so why wouldn't people consider liberalism the best regime possible? After all, what other regimes could provide one with the abundance of goods and freedom liberal democracy provides? Liberalism has had the most success in balancing equality and freedom of individuals, a task all other regimes have categorically failed at so far. Now, more than ever, liberalism faces challenges from within, where more and more citizens feel disenfranchised with the regime, while other countries who view liberal ideals as a challenge against their own regime have been attacking both through exploiting its openness and criticizing its ideology. So I find Dr. Beiner's book very timely. Liberalism and liberal ideas need champions more than ever, people who preach its virtue but don't shy away from criticisms launched against it by its challengers. The core of today's problem is the difficulty of power. The core of Nietzsche's philosophy seems to be the conception of power, unadulterated, which has been bleeding into contemporary political discourse by the extreme groups on both sides of the political aisle. Nietzsche preaches an extreme version of Machiavelli's conception of power. For Machiavelli, power is tied to virtue, which is generally translated to English as virtue. Machiavelli employs the conception of virtue to refer to the range of personal qualities that the prince will find it necessary to acquire in order to maintain his states and to achieve great things, the two standard markers of power for him. This makes power a means of taking control, and virtue is the degree of control one exercises over their surrounding. By using power and taking control of their environment, people and politicians can make a desirable and stable political condition meant for prosperity and greatness, which is what makes Machiavelli an ideal candidate for civic Republican political theorists. Machiavelli preaches the virtue of power as a means of achieving a moral end. Unlike what people believe, Machiavelli does not teach us to seek power for the sake of power alone, but rather power is for the sake of the stability and achieving great feats. Nietzsche preaches power for the purposes of self-actualization. Now, you might be asking yourself, what's wrong with that? Well, Nietzsche's conception of self-actualization is an end at the expense of all other things. A Nietzschean world is a world occupied with people who do not care about others, have zero reservation when it comes to harming others, and only care about themselves. A miserable world where the only thing that people seek is power so that they don't get dominated by others. Nietzsche's world is truly a lonely world. Liberalism requires mutual respect because you need to understand the plight of others in order to be able to help achieve a more equal and just society. In the Nietzschean world, I as an individual is all that matters. His world is a lonely place because one is only thinking in terms of power to self-actualize rather than wait and ask themselves who they really are. This is what I believe we are seeing happen in online environments, which is becoming more and more visible in the real world as well. People start caring less and less about others and more about themselves. Think back as to how many people you have seen that talk down to people they're trying to help, or sacrifice others for their own sake while preaching that it is done for the benefit of the group, or actively trying to uproot institutions that help liberalism achieve equality or help protect their freedom. This is because such people care more about being the person who has the right opinion rather than the person who's seeking to do good in the world. Here, I is the focus, not the group. But like snakes oil salesmen of the past, people will flock to such individuals because they seem charismatic or rich or beautiful or their last name is Tate. You know, the usual. Power has an allure, not just for those who seek it, but also for those who become followers. You see, power as conceived by our Nietzschean discourse today is a resource. So if your life revolves around power and only power, you will do whatever you need to do to get it, because resources are finite. And if you don't get it, someone else will take it. Therefore, when you gain power, someone else must lose power. However, there are good ways to exercise power. Taking control of one's life by waking up early or working out consistently to gain a routine, writing a great work of philosophy or poetry, teaching yourself a new language, or sometimes just mustering up the courage to put yourself out there and make someone else's life a little bit better. There are all proper exercise of power meant for self-discipline. Power today means being right. Being right, irrespective of the evidence to the contrary, is impossible unless you use force to dominate. With power, anyone can be right, even if they are wrong. This is the core of our Nietzschean discourse. We care very little about each other and what is the right thing to do, but instead focus all our might into asserting ourselves as the champions of whatever cause we believe in blindly. We do everything we can to gain power at the expense of others, to prove to ourselves and others that we can't be wrong, it's everybody else who's wrong. When we envision a society dominated by this power struggle between different groups, what we get is a situation where everyone is in a constant state of war against everyone. In such a society, making friends and forming deep, meaningful bonds becomes impossible because you don't have friends who help you become a better person through interacting with them, since everyone is a potential enemy or competitor for power. Furthermore, every single altercation will seem as if it is a life and death situation, when in reality, sometimes confrontations are just the result of a misunderstanding or just someone having a bad day. By entrenching ourselves more and more in these power struggles, we become more and more alienated from each other. What societies need to function is to view others less in adversarial manner and more in terms of citizens who have different views than one's own. In other words, mutual respect. I don't know how that can be done, but if it is not, liberal democracies will continue to become more and more polarized and divided, which makes life more and more unbearable as more people will start emphasizing with lunatics like Nietzsche. Polarized societies don't have citizens. What they have are groups constantly fighting for supremacy, and that can be exhausting.